Welcome to Take 5, a Stoneleigh Strategies podcast series. My intent? To share unique ideas and in some cases challenge long-standing views on issues important to you. A sustainable career, managing organizations and programs, unleashing the potential of innovation. So sit back, take 5, and enjoy thinking about ideas, challenges, and you. Hello everyone, welcome aboard for today's episode entitled, Let the Discomfort Begin. I'm Rob James, let's get to it. As an officer many years ago, I was tasked by an ADM to write a corporate business plan for a large science and technology sector in a federal department. I had never done one in my short career. The biggest hurdle facing me was a line of 8 DGs staunchly opposed to what was largely seen as a bureaucratic and controlling exercise. Being relatively young, this was intimidating to say the least. On top of this, I was faced with trying to understand the complexities of S&T and the dynamics with corporate policy and management priorities and issues. I was clearly in a zone of discomfort given the early stage of my career. Only years later would I recognize how fortunate I was at that time. As one seasoned deputy minister told me years later, you will only truly develop when placed in situations of discomfort. In fact, in a separate conversation, a second deputy put it this way: if you're walking down a relatively straightforward path as part of your responsibilities, and you come across a door that is only slightly ajar, jump through it. While perhaps daunting, you'll have enough gray matter to assess the situation and make great contributions you may have never ever expected. This is where opportunity and satisfaction truly reside. In my case, this is exactly what happened with the corporate planning task all those years ago. In fact, it impacted the rest of my career. Through what amounted to a school of hard knocks, I learned the craft of planning, including the understanding that plans were valuable to different people for different reasons. Other principles were learned, such as never plan in isolation, or strive to ensure a plan motivates and mobilizes resources, but I'll save those insights for a future episode. As a result of facing the zone of discomfort head on, my confidence levels grew and my skill set was strengthened. I went on to develop leading-edge planning systems and plans in 3 departments and agencies, and developed a valuable understanding of and reach across these organizations. Let me give you 2 examples that show how combining this planning competency with the willingness to jump into a zone of discomfort paid dividends. My foundation in planning for S&T organizations helped me develop an idea for an internationally twin technology cluster approach. This concept rested upon the long-standing practice of internationally twin cities and garnered strength through planning logic, planning rigor, consultation, etc. By pure happenstance, the Canadian ambassador to the U.S. heard me speak on the concept of internationally twin clusters at an event hosted by the organization now known as Global Affairs Canada. Heck, I didn't even know he was in the room. When questions commenced after my discussion, the ambassador jumped up and my heart stopped in anticipation of what challenging questions he may ask. To my delight, he asked if we could build him a twin cluster with the United States. He had just held meetings with the newly minted President Obama a day earlier in Ottawa, and one of the top joint priorities was science and technology collaboration around carbon sequestration. Eventually, he raised the concept with the clerk of the Privy Council. I truly believe the rigor and the logic behind the concept shone through and gave some much-needed credibility to the initiative. As a second example, I attended a national symposium on technology clusters in Washington, D.C. The event was sponsored by the White House and the U.S. National Academies of Science. I had worked with my team in Ottawa over a number of years to build a solid technology cluster concept and strategy. I had the good fortune of meeting the symposium chair the evening before the event and had a marvelous conversation around technology clustering and innovation in general. My knowledge of technology clusters was founded in part through good program strategy and good program planning, which helped position me to speak easily and comfortably with the chair. The next morning, the event unfolded as it should in the storied Keck building, the shrine of U.S. S&T policy. In the early afternoon, the chair approached me in the crowd without warning and asked if I would participate in the final panel of the day to provide a Canadian perspective on technology clustering. I had no presentation materials nor any prepared speaking points, and the panel was to begin in less than 2 hours. A zone of discomfort for sure. I agreed to his request and frankly relied upon the logic and rigor that our planning efforts had produced over time. My discussion was well received, in fact, so much so that immediately after the panel, the White House lead on technology clustering invited me to the White House. She wanted me to brief senior officials on our approach. For me, of course, this was a real thrill and an honor, but also an affirmation of the value of comprehensive planning techniques and the opportunities that lurk behind partially open doorways. And to give some completeness to the story, I was eventually appointed to a 2-year term by the United States National Academy of Sciences to a national committee looking at the future of manufacturing. To contrast this, I heard a story a number of years back from a very well-placed individual about a lunchtime meeting between two very senior people. One presented an idea to the other as if it was a fleshed-out initiative, using a napkin from the restaurant to sketch out the idea and related financial numbers. However, there had been no planning in advance. This was purely an off-the-cuff idea. A significant problem emerged as a key central agency figure phoned later that day looking for those figures and other details of the supposed fleshed-out initiative. Unfortunately, the napkin had been thrown out at the end of lunch. Needless to say, someone was sent to the restaurant to root through the garbage. This is a true story. Let me leave you with 2 final thoughts. In recounting these stories to friends and colleagues over time, some have come back with the notion that I've been lucky. There is no doubt that luck plays a role. However, I once saw a famous football player respond during a television interview in which he was asked if he was just plain lucky with some of his catches that day. The player stated very confidently, and I've never forgotten this, that luck is the residue of design. And finally, in terms of operating in a zone of discomfort, Theodore Roosevelt captures it well. He says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." Thanks for listening to Take 5. If you have any reactions or ideas, or if you're looking for some counsel, I'd be pleased to hear from you. You can email me at rob@stoneleystrategies.ca. And, time permitting, please check my website at www.stoneleystrategies.ca. Our mission: to help position you and your organization for success.